Welcome back, students. What we're going to be doing today is making a sculpture and a weaving combined, which is kind of cool because it's like a hard material combined with a soft material, and there's a lot of contrasts and opposites happening here, which is really exciting for people to look at, I mean. So what I'd like you to do is come to school, and I have a plastic baggie that has a slab of clay in it. So a slab is an even thickness of clay. And you'll find a piece of paper, something similar to this, which is your clay size, and a piece of paper, something similar to this, which will guide you through the steps that we're about to do. What you'll do is, I have a rolling pin here, and you don't necessarily need to use a rolling pin. You can use the slab the way that it is, but I want to show you, if you did have a rolling pin, oh boy, you'd have to roll it out and make sure that you make sure that you wash this rolling pin really well. But again, you can just use the slab that I give you fine. Mine is a little awkward today. It wasn't a good cut of a slab, but your slabs are nice and even. If you do roll it out, you have to make sure that you don't get very thin. This has to stay quite thick. So you can't roll it out very much, otherwise it'll become too thin for the next process. The next, what you're going to do is decide where you want your hole to be. So the hole is where the weaving is going to go, and I know this sounds bizarre, but stick with me. So the hole is where the weaving is going to go. I want mine to be off center a little bit, so I'm going to put it over in this area, and you can kind of see where my finger is. And then I don't want my outside of my clay to be a square anymore. I want it to be a different shape. So what I'm going to do is make my signature shape, which is something I've always doodled since I was a little kid, is I make a shape that kind of looks like this. And so I actually don't want to cut off a lot of the clay, but I'm going to cut off some of it. So this is my shape. It's going to be kind of an organic shape, but I like that it has a little twist at the end. I want it to be bigger, so I'm going to erase this. And because I'm sketching very, very lightly, I can tell that I can just erase it with my finger. So what I'm about to cut off isn't much, and that's exactly what I want to do. I don't want to cut off much of the outside of this piece. I want to leave this as big as possible. So whatever shape you choose, whether it's a square, a rectangle, an organic shape, a geometric shape, make sure that you're not cutting off much clay from the outside. And if you choose to leave it a rectangle, you have to make sure to smooth the edges. So we'll talk about that in a second. So now that I have my shape, I'm going to take a knife, and you could use, I have a fettling knife in class, but you can use a butter knife. And what you're going to do is make sure that your knife goes straight up and down, not like this, to give a, I don't want a beveled edge. I want a 90-degree edge where it's flat on top, and then it's up and down on the bottom. So any kind of angle like this, if you use your knife and you cut, is going to leave a weak edge, and I don't want that. So straight up and down, and I'm going to drag my knife on the paper to make sure that I get a nice clean cut. That's what your knife is for, is to give you a nice clean cut. So you have to do very, very little smoothing. Mrs. Samla does not like to spend her time smoothing in clay. I like other things. You can make a little sculpture or something out of the leftover clay that you have if you wish. That's fine by me, but I just want to make sure that I get it all cut off and do it well. There we go. And that's all I wanted to cut off. I don't really like that. I'm going to cut it off just a little bit more. However, before you do that, which students like to do, make sure you make your mark and then follow your mark, because what happens is suddenly they cut and cut and cut, and you have something that's so small that you don't have a slab anymore. So I'm just going to smooth these edges a little bit. Make sure that this is a 90-degree. Make sure that this sticks out the way that I want to, nice and smooth, flat on top. And then we're going to go ahead and cut a hole out of the center of this. So you need to have some space, so I can't cut the hole really close to this edge, otherwise that clay is going to crack. So center is fine, but if you want to move it over a little bit, just make sure that you're not moving it over too much to one corner or the other. I do want it on, no, I'm going to put it on this corner instead. Yep, change my mind. So these are going to become straw holes. They're not going to be that tiny, so make sure that that also isn't too close to the edge. Then I'll have you trace this out as well as you possibly can. Make sure that you poke through and make all of these dots, and I'm going to go to the outside of the dot, not right on the dot. I've learned this. Outside, outside, outside on the dot. Make sure that you poke through. That way you've done all your dots. If you miss a dot, we're going to have some problems. And we can figure it out. Got all my dots. Now I'm ready to do my carving. So again, that nice sharp 90-degree angle. And I do always have my clay on a piece of paper because I don't want it to stick to the table. Plus, look at how easy this is. I keep my knife in one spot and I just go like this and cut it out. It's so easy. I can go right through the paper, boom, I've got that. Yep, I know it ripped here. The paper doesn't matter. That's just to keep everything from cutting through, so it works great. So here I go, and I've got some extra clay. Like I said, if you want to make a little sculpture out of that, I would accept that. Just make sure that it's not too thick, so nothing over this thickness if you make a sculpture, but I would accept that and I'd fire it for you. As long as it's safe to fire. It can't be too thick, otherwise it could break or blow up in the kiln, I should say. The next thing we're going to do, remember, smoothing out all the edges, and then I want you to go through and right on the outside of this, you're going to get your straw that I should have also given you. Forgot about that earlier. And you're going to poke a hole in here. So that's why, this is super satisfying, by the way. That's why you really want to make sure that you have enough room on this side that works. And if you're thinking about it, yes, all of that clay is getting shoved through my straw and it's going to be coming out the other side pretty soon, which is kind of funny. Here it comes. Make sure that as you're doing this, that it's actually cutting through, because as it starts to come out the other side, it can get kind of tricky and it might not poke all the way through. So there should be an odd number of holes that you have in here, and that's going to help us with our weaving, which is going to be the next step. Well, at least eventually one of the steps. Awesome. So I have 17 holes poked in here. That was what was on your paper, a circle. And now it's time for that idea of contrast that I said before. So contrast is opposites. And what I'm looking for is for you to take any kind of tool that you have and create at least 4 different textures across your piece that makes sense to you. I'm just going to go through and show you a little bit of the idea of the textures. Pressing down like this. We're going to decorate this with watercolor at the end, and the more textures that you put on here, the better. Notice I didn't say the deeper. If we go too deep, you're going to actually crack through your piece and have some problems, so I don't want that, but I love the scaly texture. Some students taught this to me years ago, some 6th graders actually, that were doing some fish pieces, and I was like, wow, that's awesome. They just made some really good textures. So you don't have to watch me do that the whole time. Now I'm going to come through and try a different texture. I'm going to use this end, and no, I'm going to use this end, and I'm going to create a contrasting texture, kind of like a hashtag, not a hashtag, but like a dash texture going through here. So this work could be abstract. Sometimes students have created a scene, like a mountain scene or a sunset scene. So I'm only doing textures that are abstract, but you can, this whole surface here is for anything for you to make your style of art on. It's very, very free. And today I'm just feeling more like abstract stuff because I think I've been doing it lately in my other classes. So, and I'll continue in here doing another texture, making sure that this whole thing has texture on it, except for I'm going to leave this part smooth all in here because it's going to help with my weaving. So we have our slab that's an even thickness, a hole cut out in it. We have our 17 holes poked, and over here we have different textures that are coming in and making it interesting. Please don't go too deep because you'll get a crack in it, and if you do, we just have to solve those problems. And like I said, here's your extra clay if you want to make a little sculpture out of it. You're going to return these both to me wet. That means put them back in the plastic bag and return them to me wet. So then I can write your name on them and make sure it goes into the kiln. Oh, and make sure your name's on it somewhere, like on a piece of paper says your name, you know, in the bag. Otherwise, I won't know whose it is, so make sure that you do that. Now, as a last thing, in my instructions, you can also do this on a piece of cardboard. That's totally fine. I'm just offering you clay. You can, it is a bit of a transportation issue. It's a timing issue. I know it can be messy at home, so a piece of cardboard would work just as well. And you don't have to add the texture to this. This would come in the decoration part with painting. So be clear. Clay is an option. cardboard is an option, and that way you can serve both purposes. You can use lots of different materials in this. I would also let you use metal, but that's going to get complicated with those metal sheets and stuff, and I don't want anyone to get like cut or anything like that. So there's all sorts of options. But anyway, enjoy. Hope to talk with you soon. Thanks, friends. Bye.